Well, hi there, and welcome to today's Evolve Alliance Provider Member Showcase. I have with me Matt Esler from Padua. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Sue. How are you? Hi, everyone.
Fabulous. Great to have you on board as a provider member. Today, this session, we're going to drill into your offering. And in a nutshell, I'd probably describe Padua as being a outsourced paraplanning service for advisors delivered by onshore Australian-based paraplanners. And we're going to get into some detail about what you do and how you do it now. So why don't we start with a bit of background on who is Padua?
Thanks, Sue. Yeah, it's definitely outsourced paraplanning provided onshore, so Australian made, Australian owned. And I think one of the key differentiators with Padua as well is that it's powered by technology. In fact, one of the compliance managers that was looking at this technology recently from one of the big licensees said, this is like 10-pin bowling with the guardrails up. Advisors can't throw a gutter ball if they're using Padua. And I thought that was really interesting because since I've joined the industry, there's been this sort of tension between advisors and compliance managers, and the fact that we can deliver this service, this tech-enabled service that advisors love and compliance managers love, means that you've got to be solving something, right? If compliance and advisors agree, it's unbelievable. And I just want to talk about the byline, the great people powered by smart technology. We've actually hired a huge number of advice experts inside the Padua business, and they really guide and inform the technology, and in turn, the technology makes the service more efficient. So I'll talk more about that as we go through, but I just want to give a bit of background as to where we came from in the first instance. So Anne-Marie, my sister, and I set up the business in 2014, and unfortunate for us to, a lot of advisors think that we're married, which makes us feel very uncomfortable, but we set the business up in 2014. Anne-Marie and I both actually come from a similar background. We were both heads of technical, which made for very sad conversations around at the family barbecue, you know, us talking about superannuation and retirement strategies.
It's thrilling.
It made our other siblings very uncomfortable, I can tell you. So, but we sort of come from that similar background. I sort of was head of technical services and at Advanced Asset Management, and I actually went into becoming one of the founders of Midwinter after that. And Anne-Marie sort of moved into technical services and paraplanning. And when we were setting the business up together and talking about what Padua would look like, we really wanted to set up this platform, this technology platform that enabled advisors and paraplanners to come together. And so we actually, Anne-Marie had a sea change and moved down to Kiama, and I was based in Sydney. So we've got two offices, one's in Kiama, one's in Sydney. We need that 2-hour gap just to keep the sibling rivalry under control. But we've built the business up now. We've got over 100 staff now. 3% of the market use Padua. And so, yeah, it's really gone from strength to strength. And in fact, recently we undertook a big capital raise and raised nearly $10 million. So it's sort of taken us to a new level now. And I think that will shine through for the advisors that are using Padua. The support and the technology and the efficiency that we can provide is incredible. So it's now used by some of the leading brands, Findex, some of the account practices, AMP practices, Wealth Market have mandated the use of Padua, Fiducian. So some of the biggest brands in the industry use Padua, and we're really expecting that to grow now that we've sort of built a big sales and distribution and support team to help the advisors out. Previously, it was mostly me doing that sort of stuff. So the advisors will be very happy that that's been handed over to someone else now. But really what we're trying to solve for are these key issues that advisors are really struggling with. And, you know, we all know about the increased compliance costs that have taken place. You know, you've seen FASIA and the Royal Commission and BOFA before that. It's really meant that the regulatory pressure, the compliance pressure on advisors has just gone up and up and up. And so what we're really trying to do is make it easy for advisors to recommend and generate advice and really try and reduce that cost pressure. At the same time, increasing the quality of advice. And so if you can increase quality and decrease costs, you're going to add value both to advisors and the end investor. So it's incredibly important. And the other thing that we really try and focus on is consumer trust. We're strong believers in getting rid of this old way of providing advice where the advisor would see the client in the fact find meeting, scribble down on, we call it chicken scratch on the fact find pad, as much information about the client as possible, almost illegible information is handed to the paraplanner. The paraplanner then jumps on a Starship Enterprise and navigates this complex modeling and research systems, and they produce this 100-page document and hand it to the advisor, and the advisor looks at it and go, what is this? And the paraplanner says, trust me, it's perfect. And then the advisor's like, well, I don't know about this, and they hand it to the client and they say, trust me, this is the way to go. And so along the way, you've taken two big leaps of faith. And I think what you really need to do is really take the client along the journey. And the way to do that is visually engage the client and actually show them what's happening along the way. And through Padua, you can actually achieve that. So it's hugely important. And
I think it's fascinating, Matt, that even though you're providing what is typically considered to be a back office function from an advice firm, most people would not think that the paraplanner has anything to do with the client, particularly if it's outsourced. But you've taken it from this totally different angle of saying, well, yes, we're documenting your advice, but we're also helping you bring it to life when you present it to the client. So is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. And it's about having the investor, the advisor, and the paraplanner all on the same platform and seeing the same information. And if you can do that, and you can do that visually, and you can do that well and comprehensively, it's amazing the difference in advice and strategic recommendations and product recommendations you can make. And I'm going to give you a little demo about that later today. But you know, I think that the important, and I'm looking at this slide, I think advisors are going to be thinking, oh, Matt, his information's a bit old. The 21,400 advisors now down to 19 or a bit less than that now. So this slide I put together was earlier in the year, and I think that number's from November last year actually. But the important point is that there's 2.6 million Australians getting advice at the moment. So 10%, just a bit over 10% of Australians receive advice, but over 40% want advice. And the problem is that it's not accessible for them. It's not affordable. So what we really need to do as an industry is really bring down the cost of advice. And that's where Padua is completely focused. You know, if you think about all of the tech providers in the industry, you know, you've got fact find providers, you've got practice management providers, you've got CRM providers. There's no one focused on advice, and that's where Padua sits well and truly. That's our sweet spot. We only do advice tech. That's all we're going to do. Someone said to me recently, "Oh, you're going to do a CRM, or you're going to do a practice management?" Absolutely not. I think that, you know, there's enough CRMs in the marketplace that you don't need another one. That's for sure. No. But there's no advice tech, pure advice tech that doesn't do anything else. It just does advice. And I think it's something that's been missing in the industry. And you know, the tech that we've been able to build today and the tech that we're going to be building tomorrow is unbelievably useful for advisors. And the other great thing, I guess, is, sorry, Sue.
No, I was going to say this is music to everybody's ears, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say, you know what, we've all heard it before. So we all know, and we're not going to name and shame, but we all know of software providers that have promised the world and not even delivered an atlas. So in a moment, I'm going to play a testimonial from someone, an advisor who's actually used your services. So it's one thing for you and I to talk about it. Sales pitches are great, but it's really important to see that what you're talking about really does come to life and is working right now. So let me finish. I'll let you finish your point, and then we'll throw to your advisor.
Yeah, and I guess it's important for advisors to understand, you know, when it comes to advice generation and efficient advice, we really see ourselves as the experts. And I think even the management consultants like EY and KPMG and the like, they see Padua in that vein as well. In fact, one of EY's clients was Findex, and Findex were looking to do this big transition into their new FNZ badge centric platform, and Padua was selected to do that transition. And we were sort of a little bit of the way through the transition, and Findex said, you know, we love the quality, we love the turnaround. Can you look at starting to do some of our paraplanning as well? We've got this huge backlog, we've got this huge overflow. And some of the advice was taking a long time to get back to clients, sometimes in the weeks. And so within 4 months, we were able to reduce that turnaround time from in some instances in excess of 2 months down to 6 days. And that's, you'll see that in the tech. When I show you the demo in a second, you'll actually see the average time at around 6 days. And that's across all of our clients. And the reason why we're able to do that so quickly and so efficiently, but still have a really high quality premium service that goes through a number of hands and eyes before it gets back to the advisor, is because of this technology that we've created. And that 10-pin bowling with the guardrails up is so important. And I guess the other thing to note is, we've got the 2 services: transition, which is any change stuff. So it's like foundation SOAs, or if the advisors are consolidating various different platforms onto a new administration platform, or maybe they've acquired a new book and they want to transition their clients. We offer that service as a transition service. It's actually a project management service as much as the actual advice generation and the application forms and transfer authority forms and the transition pack. And then we've got the paraplanning service, and those 2 services really help guide the tech, because we started with this tech-enabled services business, and you can imagine when you've got proprietary tech, it starts here. It starts at 0 because you're starting from scratch, and the services up here, it's mostly manual to begin with. It's like the old navigator, they had their hands working behind the screen, So, but then the tech gets better and better and better, and now it's sort of taken over. And in fact, we're actually offering the tech as standalone software now. So software as a service as well as the tech-enabled service. And the reason why we've been able to do that is because the services experts, the advice experts that sit within Padua, they've been using the tech. So the advice experts are using the tech that we're then giving to the advisors. So when we give the tech to the advisors, we've already been using it ourselves for quite a number of years and testing it and improving it and making it better. And so that's what the advisors are now starting to see the benefit of that. There's the fact find technology that they can get hold of. There's the product ROA generator Panorama that's a game changer, I think, in the industry, that I'm going to give you a sneak peek at. But it's great that we've now got to 3% market share, and that it's growing and growing. We've brought on the likes of Joey McCann and Brett Canning into the sales team, and they're really having an impact. But as the number of advisors, the number of advisor eyeballs grows, that obviously increases the number of advice documents and advice that we're creating. Padua generates over 1,000 advice documents every month. So imagine the data that we're capturing across the industry when you've got 3%. It's bigger than a Morgan Gallup poll on the election. And so what we're doing now is actually feeding that data back to our clients, giving back to the advisors the information on benchmarking. So advisors that use Padua can actually see where they sit on upfront and ongoing advice fees relative to the industry, what products some advisors are using, and or the products that advisors are using in the industry relative to what they're doing. And it's incredible to look at this data. I always thought, there's the BT Panoramas and the CFS First Choice and Macquarie and MLC and Ida Left. That's probably all the platforms that advisors use. But I saw the data, I couldn't believe it. There was hundreds of platforms that advisors are using. Incredible. And I would have had no idea had I not seen that data. And unfortunately, the whole financial services industry uses surveyed information. And it's so important that you capture real data. And Elixir captures real data. And I think it's so important that we start using real data from advisors and actually giving that back to the advisors to sort of improve and learn and educate and train. It's so important. So that's what the data insight part is all about. Interestingly enough, I've thrown the advertising piece in there because a lot of advisors go, hey, what's with the ad on the platform? And it's really interesting. We're providing this premium paraplanning service. It's onshore. You actually get a quality assurance manager dedicated to your group, your practice, and senior and intermediate paraplanners sitting under it. So it's not a dedicated paraplanner, it's a dedicated team suit. And it's really interesting. The average cost of our plans, because of the tech, we were able to get it down to around $600 a plan on average. This is going back a couple of years ago. And we thought that was great. And at the time, that was really cool. But obviously, there's been more and more price pressure on advisors. So my partner, Bree, is actually in advertising. She was working with one of the agencies, and she said, advertising agencies are going to want to be on this platform. So we sort of explored it, and we found out that if we put one ad on the platform, we could actually reduce the advice cost for advisors from $600 down to under $500 per plan on average. So this is going from simple all the way to complex plans. I'm talking about the average. And incredible. We went to our advisors and said, what do you think, guys? Are you happy with having that out on the screen? It's going to reduce. And they all said, absolutely, Matt. Whatever you can do to reduce the cost of advice, we're in for. And that's what Padua is all about. We want to reduce the cost of advice. We want to enhance or improve turnaround time. So being able to get the advice request to a paraplanner and back to the client within a week or two is incredibly important. If it goes longer than that, the client's forgotten what's gone on and you almost have to restart the engagement again. It's so important as well to reduce risk. Compliance is huge, right? And so what we've done is built these compliance parameters in the technology so the advisors know exactly what they're doing right and wrong. And it's really funny because I've always seen compliance, present to advisors at dealer group conferences and whatever. And the advisors just want to know the answer. It's not like advisors want to do the wrong thing, but they just want to be told what the right thing is. But unfortunately, compliance aren't like that. They're kind of like acid. They don't like to tell you what you shouldn't do, So what we've done is build all the compliance parameters into the technology. So the advisors just follow a path and it's easy peasy, Japanese. So that's it. And that's linked to the next part, strategy. We come from a technical services background. It's all about strategy for us. We really feel like strategic advice has dropped dramatically over years. And it's because advisors are under too much pressure. They can't possibly learn more strategies and get better and better when they've got so much time constraints on what they're doing right now. They don't have time to breathe at the moment. So what we've done is actually build strategy into the tech so that advisors go, okay, I didn't realize I could recommend that strategy for this client. Oh, this is interesting. And the tech actually informs the advisor what strategy they could be implementing, which is unbelievably beneficial.
Fantastic.
I've rambled on enough, Sue.
No, that's great. That's a really lovely umbrella of all of the things that you do. And we're going to drill into how you actually do that and how an advisor might use it. So before we jump into this, it's one thing to hear from you and I. Let's hear from one of your advisors about what they have to say about using Padua.
Hi, my name is Jason Harwood. I'm CEO of Life Wealth Group based out of Melbourne in Victoria.
How has your business worked with Padua?
So we've been using Padua for 4 years. They've done something like 600, 700 SOAs for us over that period of time. What's great about that in a number of ways, but one of the key parts is being able to use their software for online ordering of SOAs and requests to prepare statements of advice. Even more importantly is how that's evolved over time, our data being able to flow all the way through to their software and then save us double handling data, double entering data before making requests. One of the things that I was really pleased about with Padua from the outset of our relationship was we sent off our first few paraplanning requests through their software, and we went through the process of the paraplanners contacting the advisor to have that sort of technical upfront session to discuss where they were trying to go and what we were trying to do. And to a person, each of my advisors came back to me after the first session they had with the Padua team and were really blown away by the technical detail that they went into, the level of personalization. Each of our advisors were really impressed that there was someone on the other end who very much knew what they were about and what we were trying to achieve. And it wasn't just an order taker being directed by the advisor. There was some coming together of technical minds about, well, what is the best strategy for this client? So the Life Wealth team have always been really impressed by the Padua crew.
So what impacts has working with Padua had on your business?
So talking about outcomes with us working with Padua, it's not so much about quantifying time and those sorts of things. I'm sure I could do that if I went and worked on it. It's actually what it's meant for us as a business that's more important. It's been critical in us getting capacity. And that capacity is, manifested in a number of ways. One, it's given us the chance to have more capacity to spend time with clients and do that real value add relationship building piece. It's given more capacity to our people, from admin staff all the way up to advisors, to focus on their own professional development and just have the headspace to do more and think about their roles more. And that's been critical, I think, in us becoming the business we've become over the last 4 years with Padua taking Statement of Advice Preparation Office. That's helped our culture grow. It's helped our people be focused on being a better business. It's helped us all have enough time to think about, well, what do we need to do to improve as a business to deliver on our mission of, looking after clients and looking after our people. So it's been really critical in building our culture. And, we were recently certified as a great place to work, and Padua, in no small part, is part of that, because it freed us up to be able to do the things we need to do as a business.
Would you recommend Padua to other advisors?
I think this is one of the best decisions I've made in the time I've been with Life Wealth. I mean, there's been a few others that I'm really happy with. You make some wrong ones along the way, but this one definitely has freed us up to do some better things as a business. In the 4 years we've been working with Padua, I've never shied away from recommending to every other advice firm, because we all talk about, how do we make paraplanning better? How do I solve for paraplanning? Should I keep it internal? Should I shift it external? I don't think there's anyone I would have spoken to in the last 4 years who's asked me that question that I haven't recommended Padua to, because, as I said, it's made a significant difference to our business, and I think it can make a pretty significant difference to most businesses.
A lot of advisors say, where do you sit from a technology point of view? If you've got this technology that sort of connects paraplanners and advisors, where does it sit? I'm using Xplan, I'm using Advisor Logic, I'm using your old shop midwinter. How does it work? How does it fit in? And I guess the easiest way to explain it is, we are just advice. And, if you look at and use Xplan as an example, we really wanted to partner with Xplan and ensure that, the majority of the advisors in the market are using Xplan. And actually, fantastic CRM, fantastic portfolio management tool. And so we just thought, we don't want to go down that path of recreating that tool. That's, you'd be a fool to try and do that, I think. But trying to bring that incredible data to life, visually and engaging for the advisor, so that you can produce an advice document quickly and effectively for the client, that's what we should be focusing on. It was never intended to be a tool that you could use in front of the client, Xplan or Advisor Logic. But it's incredibly important that you do that, because it's all part of that consumer trust, all part of that engagement. If you can engage the client and they feel like you're a trusted partner of theirs from a financial planning perspective, it's incredible how much more involved and how much they value your advice. All of that sort of great stuff comes to life. So,
and to meet your fuzzy requirements, that you can prove that the client understands the advice, because you've had a way to bring it to life for them rather than just in a static document, right?
Totally. And, as every planner knows, it's all about trade-offs. If I've got a pensioner and they don't have enough pension income and we need to increase their pension income, guess what? Their capital is going to run out sooner. Every action has a reaction. And similarly in advice, it's all about trade-offs. If I put some money towards contributing to super, well, I can't put as much towards paying off a home loan, or I can't put more towards, investing outside of super. It's all about trade-offs and priorities and working on objectives and understanding, what's most important to the client, and sort of putting the strategy together based on those different elements and either qualitative or quantitative factors. It all comes into play, and that's why advice is such a hard thing to sort of work out in terms of a tech point of view, because it's tech's binary, but nothing to do. Advice is not. There's so many different factors involved. It's impossible. And they talk about robo advice. Incredibly difficult to replicate what an advisor does with a robot, because there's all those subjective forces and qualitative forces coming into play. But I sort of want to talk about where we sit. So what we've done is break down the advice process. So when you're using Padua from a paraplanning perspective, basically what we enable is we pull the data in from Xplan or whatever CRM system you're using. That gets pulled into the fact find. And the great thing about this fact find tool, Sue, is it creates an exceptions report that informs the advisor what data is missing from Xplan or the CRM that they're using. And that allows you to then go, okay, do I know the answers to these questions that are missing? Can I update that information? But it also allows you to send it to the client so they can actually input that information. So you've got this client
sending a link, and the client goes in live and puts the data in.
Exactly. So it's a dynamic system. It's a platform that allows investors, advisors, and the paraplanner producing the advice to come together. And so, but we've broken it down into these different components. They're all Italian cities. We called the company Padua, and it's actually an ode to our little brother, Anthony, who tragically passed away in 2002. So Anne-Marie and I come from a Catholic background, and Mum and Dad named Anthony after Saint Anthony of Padua. So that's where the name Padua comes from.
Nice.
And then we actually named each of our software programs after Italian cities, just because we couldn't get away from the Italian city thing after that. But it's actually, that's not many advisors know that, but that's actually the background to the name.
I like it.
Yeah. So, and I guess I'm getting a bit emotional now, but
Yeah.
So once you've got the existing state, and it's all compliant, it makes sure that the advisor has captured everything. Once you've got the existing state through the fact find, you then want to do your product research and your strategy modeling, and then put it into a recommendation through Padua. So, and as you do this, it actually builds the bid statement. It starts building the SOA or the ROA. It certainly builds the product comparison out. I'm going to show you a little bit about that a bit later.
Okay. Before you go there, can I, so there's two aspects of this. One would be if you're working with an existing client, so you've already got their data in your or some of their data in your software. The other is where you're bringing a brand new client through. So as you said, if it's an existing client, you can pull the data from your system. It'll let you know what needs updating and the client can do it. If it's a brand new client, are you saying that you also have a digital fact find that the advisor can send to collect that data from the client?
Exactly. So you can start afresh, you can send the client. And in fact, some of our clients like Findex have actually created a short form fact find, and you can actually ping the short form fact find to the client to start the process. And then that comes back, and then the advisor does the long form with the client, and then they move into the next stage, which is the recommendation. So
and I'm assuming, sorry to interrupt, I'm assuming if you're a firm that's already sold for some of these issues, if you've already got a beautiful system that collects that data and you still want to use Padua, you would just not use that bit, but Padua would suck the data that it's been collected from your CRM, yeah?
Exactly right. So we can pull the data in from Xplan, and you don't have to use the fact find if you don't want to. It just pulls in from Xplan anyway, so you've got all the existing information there. Because I think the key to advice really is saying, this is the client's existing state, this is what I'm recommending, what's the difference? And the beauty of Padua is it shows what the benefit of the advice is, what the cost of the advice is, and benefit minus cost equals value. So really highlighting the value of advice. And it actually shows this is your existing state, this is scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3, scenario 4, scenario 5. And it actually gets the advisor to have the conversation. Client, do you want me to implement this particular advice? The benefit's this, the cost is this, the value is this. What do you reckon? It's very difficult for a client to say no when you've got positive, 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 positive. Yeah. They go, I'll take it all. Now, sometimes the cost actually outweighs the benefit. You know, there's some strategies to implement. It might be only a $200 or $300 benefit, but the cost is going to be $500, $600, $700, $800. You know, there's some really administratively cumbersome strategies. Advisors know this, but showing the client that visually and allowing them to make that decision, incredibly powerful. And then when you get audited or someone that says, "Oh, show me this advice," you can actually show, well, actually, I presented all of these strategies, and the client wanted all of them except this one. Fantastic! Like, what a great thing to present. And advisors have been scared to do this or haven't had the tools to really help them explain this. They do this anecdotally. They do this in their own mind and in their hearts. Really, they're helping the client, and they're saying, "Why can't these people see my value?" It's because it's not being presented in a way that can be represented.
And the client can visualize. So one of the things that we talk with a lot of our clients about, Matt, is moving away purely from that quantitative determination of value. So, okay, you're going to save X amount of tax and we're going to reduce your fees by this much. That stuff's really easy to bring to life, but it's the qualitative stuff around, you know, the client doesn't have anybody that they can trust. They need to have a second set of eyes on their decisions. They want to sleep better at night. They want to remove anxiety. Can it actually put those things in there in that determination of value?
Absolutely. And look, we really focus on the reasons for seeking advice upfront. And the reason for that is that rather than going through a fact find scenario, really going through, tell me about your family, tell me about your business, tell me about your health, tell me about your dreams, tell me about, the things that are more important than my super balance is this and my age and date of birth is this. This is the stuff that actually creates more opportunity and more understanding, deeper understanding of what the client's circumstances are. And so we really push that as the first step. But I want to give you a quick squeeze because I know that I prefer to get into a demo. I mentioned that we work with the some of the biggest groups in the industry, so I'll leave it there. But I'm just going to quickly give you a squiz at a couple of things. I'm going to show you Palermo. Sorry, Sue.
I was just going to say, sorry, while you're pulling that up, to be clear, you don't just have to be part of a larger licensee, do you? Do you look after self-licensed firms?
Absolutely. In fact,
difficult to get set up with you?
Yes, absolutely. So we work with all manner of firms. In fact, one of the advisors that provided one of the testimonials is from an IFA self-licensed group. So we work with IFAs with sort of 3, 4, 5 advisors all the way up through to the bigger institutional groups like your AMPs and your accountants and so on and so forth.
Great.
So one of the things I wanted to show you, and this is the live site, so I probably can't go into too much detail here because I'll be showing you some client information, but I won't do that. I'll sort of just show you the headline stuff. And what this really shows is the efficiency that is created through the Padua technology. So you can see firstly the 6.12 days there. That's the average turnaround across all of our groups. And like I mentioned, we're producing over 1,000 advice documents a month. You can see these advice documents currently in play. There's 40 submitted, 36 received, 90 in progress, 35 on hold, 31 in review, 41 overdue. Now, I don't want the advisors to get panicking about the overdue. That means that the paraplan is held up for 3 days. And you'll see why this is important because we track everything and we know exactly what's going on. And the key to getting that 6.12 days down is to just keep chipping away at what makes up that 6.12. So the 6.12 is 1.4 in received, 3.54 in progress, and 1.08. And I know there's a few advisors calculating. Trust me, it adds up to 6.12. Give or take some rounding on the decimals. And the 0.52 here on hold is the additional amount. So the 6.12, if you add the 0.52, you get 6.64, and that definitely adds up. So I guess what's important there is we're tracking each step of the advice process. So the received is actually when the advisor submits the request to Padua. Our quality assurance manager looks at it and actually writes out a summary confirmation and sends the summary confirmation back to the advisor to say, this is what we understand you're recommending. And this piece is critical. The advisor then reconfirms the confirmation, says, yep, that's right, or no, that's not quite right. This is what I was meaning to say there. And that's really important because then the quality assurance manager has already audited the request. Then it goes to the paraplanner. The paraplanner starts working on the plan, but they can actually pin their ears back and really get going because they've got all the information that they need. It's already being confirmed by a quality assurance manager. And there's none of this back and forth dance between advisor and paraplanner saying, advisor, you haven't provided all the information. Advisor saying, I'm giving you that. Why didn't you ask me?
It's in the file mode, or it's the data's there, you didn't see it.
That's right. Or worse still, I sent you this request 2 weeks ago. Why didn't you ask me then? Yeah. And that's so common. That doesn't happen at Padua. And so then what happens is, so this is the 3.54, and you can see why the 3 days is so important because the 3.54, if they're getting to 3 days, that means they're going to start pushing that average up. So I want to make sure that we're alerting ourselves, okay, they're at 3 days, we better check this and make sure that they're getting it back because we're always trying to reduce that time. And then this 1.08 is actually a 3-step review process, self-review, peer review, manager review. That's why it's 1.08 days.
Right. And the big question is, because we hear this all the time, a lot of advisors have experienced using external power planning and the rework that they find, I've had so many comments of people going, well, yeah, I get this document back, but then I spend twice as much time fixing it up before I can give it to the client. Where does rework fit in here?
Yeah, look, the tech has meant that all of the inputs that are coming in are completed properly in the first instance. Then you've got that audit to make sure that the inputs are completed. And that really cuts down on an incomplete or a half-baked plan. So we've got all the information, and then the paraplanner produces the plan. Then we actually, it sounds weird, but we've got a self-review. We've actually built this system that allows the plan to be checked at different stages. And the paraplanner goes through and looks at each stage. Now they've produced the plan, but then they've got to go through this self-review system. Then it goes to a colleague of theirs, or another paraplanner in the team, to review the plan. And it's funny how much other paraplanners love pointing out other paraplanners' mistakes. Then it goes back to the QA manager before it comes back to the advisor. So the document that comes back, you can never say that it's going to be 100% perfect every single time. But what we've done is, through the tech and through that 3-stage review process, and having a QA manager, a compliance person sitting above it all, we've really reduced or mitigated that risk, so that advisors, when you hand a document back, when Padua gives a document back to the advisor, it's going to be of a very, very high quality. So we're trying to cut that, a lot of these offshore and sort of cheaper or less premium type services, the front cost or the cost that they advertise looks great, but advisors need to consider the time that they take post-production. Like, if you're then spending 2 or 3 hours fixing a document, it's pointless, right?
Yeah.
So that's
so how about, that's one thing about after the fact. I know advisors have also said to me that they tried using outsourced paraplanning, but it ended up taking them so long to get the data in the right format and fill in the paraplanning request form the way that it was requested, that they might as well have just done the plan themselves. So how easy is it as an advisor to submit the request and get the information that you need?
So easy. And in fact, for the easy request, Sue, you can do it yourself. So I'm actually showing you Panorama now. So imagine we're connected to Xplan, or we're connected to one of the other CRMs. It can actually pull the information directly into Panorama. So in this example, I'm actually showing the existing platforms at BT and MLC in this case. And what this allows is for the information to be pulled in to Panorama, and it actually allows me to compare against my approved product list instantly. So the platform fees are shown as soon as I open this up. The platform fees are there. Not only that, it shows the platform features against each other. And then if I select, as I have in this case, I'm recommending AMP My North Choice. This must have been an AMP advisor, but I'm recommending AMP My North Choice. It then allows the one-to-one benefit comparison of BT versus AMP and MLC versus AMP. So they're the two existing platforms against AMP. So it then pulls through the existing underlying investment options and compares those investment options to my default model portfolio within each of the platforms. So it then does a fee analysis, asset allocation against the risk profile, growth defensive split against the risk profile, and performance. And it'll produce a total product view so that I can actually generate advice document, click product comparison, and it's now produced my product comparison. So you can see in this example that the product comparison is coming through here, the platform fees and table and chart, the table and chart of the investment management costs, and then the platform investment management costs combined with the investment fee, so platform plus investment. And then you've got the asset allocation against the risk profile, so the variance, and then all of those features coming through. So hugely beneficial, being able to produce research that quickly is incredibly useful. But not only that, the system is that smart. It'll actually inform and create the ROA or the SOA as we're making these selections. So incredibly useful from an advisor point of view. And then it pushes this information into the request form. So if the advisor wants to do more complex strategy, they can actually add to that. So, it cuts down the advice time dramatically. You can build an ROA in sort of 5 minutes.
Wait a minute. I'm looking at that going, great, that's product comparisons. And for those who are listening to the audio of this, they're not seeing the visual on screen. It's got beautiful charts and so forth that I'm guessing get sucked through to the document. But are you saying that as an advisor, I'm submitting my request to paraplanning, I've got the data of my client in there, I'm saying this, I'm wanting an SOA, this is the client's goals. Are you saying this system actually does these comparisons for me immediately so I can then say, actually compare it against something else as well? Or what am I looking at here?
Absolutely. So Panorama is a game changer, Sue. It allows advisors to create ROAs for the majority of the ROAs that advisors do. So most ROAs are sort of rebalances, changes in contribution strategy, changes in advice fees and engagements. So this will capture all of that. And it actually does it based on the selections you're making. So it's got the logic built into the background. So as I made that selection, as I made that recommendation to go into North, it knows that I'm rolling over from the other two products into that. And when I add my advice fees, I can then build out the value of advice. So this value of advice piece is really important because it shows the existing position and then how much value the advisor is adding by moving through that stage. And you can also add strategy. We've got basic strategies like any contribution strategy, any insurance inside super, all that sort of jazz. You can do any sort of product, so investment, pension, super, or insurance through this tool. So you don't have to use the service. You can actually build it yourself. And the reason why we built this is that Padua couldn't commercially do ROAs for advisors because by the time the advisor provided the information, you might as well have done it yourself. So we built the tool so advisors could do it themselves, but do it in front of the client, visually engage, take the client along the journey, show them the alternatives that we're comparing, show them the difference in fees, in features, what features are relevant to you, let's look at those and let's compare those. And then to be able to produce the SOA at the end is unbelievably important. So this tool will allow you to produce the SOA just like that. So
you're actually saying that you could potentially even have this up on screen with your client in the meeting, play with some of the variables, arrive at the recommendation, hit the button, the advisor can the client can actually take the document there and then, or, I mean, they need free consent, make sure they're prior. So I don't know about reading it before they actually sign it. Some advisors go, oh, just get them to sign it there and then, but give them the time to digest it. So that's all, you could do that in front of the client.
Yes, and it's digital signatures as well, Sue. So you could actually get them to sign it on the spot as well. So, and this is the incredible thing about advice. If I'm an investor, if I'm a client and I see an advisor do that, I'm going to pay them as much as they want because some advisors have this belief that if the client thinks that they're not spending hours and hours and hours of time, that it's not worth it. It's just not the case. What the client wants to see is...
If you're just pressing a button, I could do that, couldn't I? Why do I need someone with so much experience to do it?
Well, because they're the ones connecting you to all of those different things. And they're the ones taking you, the advisor is the one taking you through the trade-offs. So as I was showing you a few different screens and banging through it pretty quickly. But of course, the advisor is going to say, okay, so we could choose this product or this product or this product or this product. These are the benefits. These are the difference in fees. So the client can't make those decisions by themselves because they don't often understand what the features and benefits are and what they're worth and what it means to them. So the advisor is a concierge of sorts in terms of introducing the client to these strategies, introducing them to these products. And they wouldn't be able to do this by themselves. If we, despite the fact that it takes 5 minutes for an advisor to produce a product comparison, a bid statement, and an SOA or ROA through Palermo, if I gave that to an investor, I don't think that we would get any traction whatsoever. Yeah. It needs the advisor to guide the client, the investor, through the experience. It's their knowledge and background and skill that informs the client of what's important and what's not. what's relevant to their objectives and circumstances. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. And look, I think anybody watching this, there's going to be, it's not like advisors just starting from scratch and going, just tell me how to do it, Matt, and I'll just pick up everything. So, we're talking here about best case scenarios. Some advisors will be looking, going, well, I already do that bit, or I've got that bit enabled. So they can choose which components they use, I would imagine. Yes, you're nodding. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
So the technology could be purchased standalone. All of the technology connects into other tech, so it's all API integration enabled. And so you can either choose to take one piece or a bundle, which covers sort of the fact find technology or covers the paraplanning piece, or you could just do the product research piece if you wanted to. It's really up to the advisor. And we've really set it up like this so that not only is it component based, but you choose what services and what technology you want to access. And if it's not for you, then it's not for you. But I really can't see many advisors saying, you know what, I don't think what I just saw is right for me.
Yeah. So let me just take a step back to the example you used there about about best interest and doing product comparisons. Does it have the functionality? Because not everybody says, I want to put all my clients in AMP North. Does it have the functionality to say, this is the client's current holdings, these are the platforms that are on my APL, or these are my preferences, click optimize, it'll come up with the best outcome?
That's the next phase, Sue. So what we're doing at Padua is actually building not only the technical parameters, but also optimization into the technology so that you can actually choose preferences. We talked a little bit about this earlier, where a lot of it is subjective, a lot of it's based on preferences. But if you can say to the client, what are the most important things to you? Is it cost? Is it most features? Is it the ability to pass on to your kids on your death, or whatever the case might be? I'm making this up now.
Yeah.
But, whatever it might be, you can actually rank the preferences and it will run the scenario based on that. Incredibly important, because, if you think about something like a strategy whereby, the advisor is using net income to either reduce debt, contribute to super, or invest outside of super, any one of those three scenarios could be the optimal outcome. In fact, generally it'll be based on what assumptions you've used for growth rates and interest rates and so on that creates the best answer.
Yeah.
But it's what the client prefers. Do you want access to money? Well, that's going to knock the superannuation one out or knock it down a peg. Do you want to own your house outright, or are you comfortable with debt? Those sort of factors are what it's all about. And based on those preferences, it'll then run the scenario and actually give the mix, because it's not always a corner solution where it's zero, or, it's not binary 0 or 1 only. It could be 20% here, 40% there, 40% there. It's understanding those preferences that allows that optimization to take place.
Yeah, and from a practice management perspective, we know that it's really unwieldy if advisors are utilising, every single product on the market. There is a bit around administrative efficiencies, having relationships with the providers, your team understanding how to use the administrative systems of the different platforms, or the transactional capabilities. So in reality, as much as there is bid overrides everything, most firms will still say, look, we have an agreement with, ABC platform, we've got preferential pricing with the majority of our clients will utilize that, because it does tend to come up as a great offering for the types of clients that we work with. But then there may be a couple of secondary ones that they utilize as well. And then, of course, you've always got the industry super funds, right? So does your system get feeds from the industry funds and be able to make adequate comparisons there?
Absolutely. So we've got every industry fund you could possibly think of on the list. We actually do all the platform research, the fee and feature research on platforms in-house. So we've built a big research team headed up by Ben Walsh, who's an incredible head of research. And then we pull the investment data in from Morningstar. So ICR, asset allocation, performance information comes from Morningstar. We actually use Dexter for our insurance research. We looked at all the insurance providers in the industry, and we found Dex and Harwood were by far and away the best insurance research in the industry. So we use those guys. But having that combination of those three really allows us to paint this picture really, really well. And, you know, what I didn't show you was Verona, the research database behind the scenes, allows me to populate Palermo, which creates an incredible visual of what's going on. I think, and it's really interesting. And Padua is constantly getting feedback from advisors on how to do things better. And Ty Cockle from Financial Foundations actually said to us recently, Matt, I want to show the retail product against the pricing that we've negotiated. So I can show our clients how, because of who we are and our scale, that we're actually able to negotiate a better price. And that was incredibly powerful for them. And we were able to do that. And we're probably one of the only groups that can do something like that. So those sort of things are really important. I think sticking to the APL is obviously important, and running that optimization won't go outside of that, because the advisor can't advise outside of that usually unless they get special dispensation. But even within the APL, being able to show the client, okay, these are all the products that we can advise on, and these are the different benefits of going into each, incredibly useful. Advisors don't really have a tool that allows them to do that visually and in a way that engages the client based on their individual circumstances, needs, and objectives.
Yeah. Now, so I could see potentially a firm could look at your services and say, well, right, I've just gone from thinking I'm just going to outsource some paraplanning and send a form off and get an SOA back, to now saying, well, actually, based on the system I have, I no longer need to pay for the research functionality of my financial planning software because it's incorporated into Padua. Would I still be utilizing, if I am using a financial planning software that has data feeds from fund managers and platforms and so forth, would I still need to use that if I'm using Padua, or can I turn that off?
Look, I think the more research, the better, to be perfectly honest. I remember Tanya Seal from Clearview saying to me, our advisors have to use Risk Researcher and Vault Solver, but the fact that you're generating it as well is great, because now they've got two sets of research on file. The more research that you've done on the existing and recommended products, the better. So I don't think that it's a replace situation necessarily. I think that, and the existing CRM tools in the marketplace, I think that they all have a role to play. What we're going to do is just focus on really making advice efficient. If the dealer or the licensee requires research in a certain way, and that's what the advisor has to do, then that's obviously what needs to be done. But we want to make it as simple and effective and as easy as possible. And I think, that big issue at the moment about profitability, advice being not profitable. If you use Padua, you are a profitable business, because you're able to produce ROAs easily and effectively, so that the time cost is gone. The cost of the ROA is $150 an ROA. So it's cheap as anything, and you can produce it instantly, and you can produce it in front of the client. So you've got a happy client, you've got value, and obviously you've got more time now to spend on more complex strategies and engaging more clients and bringing on more clients. I think, the time it takes advisors to produce advice has restricted the number of clients they can have. If you can cut that time down, then it allows advisors to have bigger books.
Yeah. And so I'm going to drill into your pricing in a moment, but there's 2 points I want to touch on. Number one being that, I've got a couple of firms at the moment who have in-house paraplanning teams, and they really struggle to get meaningful stats on, well, how long does it stay in different stages of the advice process, and is our backlog blowing out? So I could, this is obviously a great solution for them because their internal team can use it as well. I know I asked this before and you changed the subject. I think you did it accidentally. But if I'm using you as a paraplanning service, like I say, there's complaints from advisors going, the amount of time it takes me to fill in their forms and submit the request, I might as well do it myself. So how do I actually submit? I've had my client, let's say I'm not doing it live with them in the meeting. Let's say I've had the meeting, I've got all the information I want, and now I need somebody to do the SOA. How do I submit it? What are we talking about?
So I guess the first thing to note is that because we're able to pull in the existing information, that's already in the system. And so then being able to select the recommended advice and strategy, we've made really, really simple for advisors. So I'm just going to bring up a little screen here, and I'll talk through this for those that are on the podcast and not watching the video.
And when you say the data's already in the system, is that only if they use your online fact find?
No, it can be pulled in directly from Xplan as well. So you can bypass that step if you've got it in Xplan already. And
why do they have a functionality to get the data in Xplan? Then it can just be pulled over rather than having to have double ups.
Yeah, we encourage the advisors to use that fact find technology, and mostly because of the exceptions reporting and the fact that there's no exceptions reporting when within the CRM systems themselves. But when we pull it into our fact find tool, and I'll show you this in a second, the first thing that you will see is the actual exception report. So I call most CRM systems that advisors use Swiss cheese. There's holes all over the place, but the advisors don't know where the holes are. And so what this system does is when it pulls it in the data from the CRM, whatever CRM system it is, it then tells the advisor where the exceptions are. So that allows the advisor to narrow down the search just to the exceptions. It actually allows the advisor to send the exceptions only to the client, for example, and say, hey, I didn't realize this, but we don't have this information on file. Before your meeting next week, it would be great if you could update this information. Yeah, we really need this to produce your advice. Now, the client may or may not respond to that, but at least you flagged it with them that, you know, they've got to consider that. So they're the questions that you're going to ask in the fact find meeting. So that existing information is already there. And so we know that already. And you'll see that in this demonstration now. So now I'm going to make the recommendation. You can see that under super, we've actually labeled out or listed out all the different strategies. And this is what I mean by guided advice and helping the advisor through the compliance steps. For example, if I click on consolidate, you'll see that the modal pops up and you can choose which client you want to look at. Let's say it's Anne. So this is pulling through Net Wealth, Australian Super, and B.
Oh, here we go. Sorry, just took a little delay there.
So this is pulling through the existing information from the CRM. So in this case, it's Net Wealth, Australian Super, AMP, and let's say I want to consolidate into Net Wealth. It then pulls through the existing investment options for each of the 3 platforms that I've got, and then I can make the recommendation of the recommended fund, and then I can choose to nominate beneficiaries or not. So it's really taking the advisor through the steps required from a compliance perspective to produce a really good comprehensive SOA. So I might say, no, I just want to do a review only, and it'll be a binding non-lapsing. And then the features. Now, this is showing the features, and I've sort of talked about the features a little bit, but I'm just going to delve into Verona. This is our research database, incredible research database that the team at Padua are maintaining. And we've built this great software that tells the research team which platforms have had PDSs released or supplementary PDSs issued. So we keep it up to date on a regular basis. And so let's choose BT Panorama. So not only can you see the different Panorama products, so you can see compact there and full there, but you can see the fees. There's a 3.03 operational risk reserve levy fee, a $95 expense recovery fee, 0.15 up to $1 million, and a $540 account keeping fee. And then the platform features, and this is the key differentiation of Padua compared to any other platform research provider. There's 125 features, data points here, Sue. So best interest has become price interest because advisors go, well, if I lose on fees, how can I roll over? This allows proper cost benefit analysis. So there's contribution types, contribution payment functionality, investment choice, investment capability, what sort of insurance capability the platform has, online functionality, pension capability, lending capability, financial advisor support. So this is getting into that stuff that you were talking about before. There's 125 data points here, and the advisor can choose what features are relevant to the client through Padua, and then it produces a comparison only of those relevant features. Then it gets the advisor to choose the alternative strategies. It pulls through the alternative products from Panorama automatically, and then it ties back to the client's objectives. This is the big issue with advisors have with compliance. They do great advice and they forget to tie it back to the objective. It forces the advisor down a compliance path, 10-pin bowling with the guardrails up. And then when they go to submit, it produces another exceptions report to say what the advisor has done correctly. And you can see here the alternatives and objectives are missing. They won't be able to submit until that's done. But when they do submit, that's when it takes you back into Roma, which is these requests. And you can see all the requests coming through here. That's what happens in the back end. So the request comes through the Padua, and that's when we start the process of producing the plan. And that's what I was showing you here in terms of the submission and the receive, in progress, on hold, in review, etc.
Great. So do you know on average how long it takes an individual advisor when they pull up Padua and they say, right, I need to submit a request for an SOA? How long does it typically take?
We actually track all of the technology, and this is the beauty of it. We know it takes on average 30 minutes to complete the whole process. And we track this on a month-by-month basis. And we're constantly trying to chip away at that time to reduce that time even further. And the release of Palermo, because it pre-populates so much information and so much of the request, it actually has cut the time down a lot. So we haven't seen the 30 come down yet. We haven't seen the new numbers come out, but we expect it's going to take sort of 5 or 6 minutes off that time, which is huge in terms of the advisor time. So you can imagine it's going to take sort of 5 minutes to do your ROA and maybe 25 minutes to do more complex advice SOA stuff.
So if I'm using an advice process where I get to know the client and I, let's say I have a really deep values-based conversation with them, I might even use something like Lumient to do that. I'm gathering all of that info. If I typically in my process have a second meeting where I'm presenting my strategies, talking through them at a high level, looking at forward modeling to help the clients sort of see that difference in those trade-off conversations, and then I'm providing an SOA with the product recommendations after that. One of the issues that I know a lot of firms have is they go, well, I kind of need to do lots of the calculations and determination in order to put this advice presentation or strategy discussion document together. So I've kind of almost created the SOA already. How do I incorporate that with an external paraplanner? They could utilize the system to be able to do that.
Absolutely. It's sort of the problem that the advisors have had and the industry have had overall is that the actual advice generation time, the modeling, the research, the editing and personalizing the document, they're getting it back and having to spend 3 or 4 hours rewriting it. But, and it's driven a lot of advisors to go back to DIY and even driven them to Excel and Word, crazily enough.
Or driven them mad.
If you can reduce that time, if you can cut that time down, and that's what Padua does, you can spend more time in the client engagement tools that Padua and groups like Luminant offer, because or Lumient, I should say. So, that sort of stuff where you're really understanding the client circumstances, really understanding the need, that's the time that you need to spend with the client. Unfortunately, what happens at the moment is that time is getting squeezed because the advisor knows they've got 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours, if you believe the KPMG FSC research, 24 hours to produce the document or produce the plan. So if you can reduce advice time down from 24 hours to the 8 hours that investment trends always talk about to under 1, then the time that you can spend with the client is as much as you like. And that's why, Lumion, I think, and these sort of great tools that really get into the heart of understanding the client's needs and what's driving them. I think that is what advice should be all about, because, you start understanding their, and I talked about it before, we really focus on the reasons for seeking advice. Really understanding what's driving the client enables you to then say, okay, we need to do this. But if this takes you 40 hours, you're probably going to cut it down to this and this. And that's what's happened to the industry. Now, we're taking that back. We're giving back the profit margin. We're not cutting corners on quality. We're not cutting corners on value. You've got to have it all. We're moving to professionalism. you want to up the ante on quality and you want to up the ante on value. And the way you do that is with absolute smart tech that brings all these things into play and allows you to have the conversations with the client, engage the client about what you're doing and what you're thinking, talk to them about the different trade-offs. You'll have an unbelievably better engagement with them and they will stay with you for life.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I love what you have done, Matt. It's you know, I think a lot of advisors will be getting to this point and going, wow, how did I not know that you were around before now? That is the complete game changer.
We've been underground for 7.5 years, Sue. We've just popped our heads out. So advisors, we're coming to see you.
Love it. So let's do a quick touch on your pricing. Now, I know that Padua are offering a special offer for Evolve Alliance members, but let's talk about your retail offer. Did you say before, if I'm creating the ROA myself, it's costing me $150 for each one?
Exactly. And the 150 includes the product comparison, the bid statement, and the ROA. So, so that's through Palermo. If you're using Padua as the service to do your plans, like I said, it's a premium offering, but our pricing is not premium at all. In fact, there's only one price, and it's the cost of the advice goes from $395 to $915 for the most complex plan. And the reason, and that's why we've got that sort of $500 average now. And the reason why we've been able to do that is because of that, you know, really creating that efficiency through the tech. And you would have seen the ad on the platform that's brought the cost down as well. So, but, you know, a lot of these other groups go, oh, you know, it's $500 and it looks, oh, that looks pretty good. And then it's another $250 for the modeling, and then it's another $100 for the product comparison. And then if we've got to do any more time on it, we charge an hourly rate, blah, 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 blah. And the advisor gets the bill back and goes, hang on a sec, I thought this was, you know, it looked cheap on the surface, but it's not. So we've really made the pricing simple so that advisors know what the cost is each time. And as they're building the strategy, they can see exactly how many strategies and what pricing bucket that equates to. On the tech side, the technology really enhances not only the engagement with the client, but actually the interaction with the investor, the advisor, and the paraplanner. And so that flow of information, it's so beneficial. And it really changes the game in terms of being able to see the client submit a request efficiently and effectively and get a plan back in a week or so. That's unbelievable. It's 6 days. So 1 week and 1 day, you can rebook your next meeting almost, you know, so incredible turnaround. And it's so consistent. And that's because we've got the tech, we've got this incredible team, and we really are constantly focused on chipping away at that time.
Yeah. So Matt, over and above that per document cost, am I having a subscription fee to use the software as well?
There's a subscription fee, but you'll find that the subscription cost of the tech is very cheap relative to other technology in the marketplace. And in terms of the value that it adds, it's not much at all. And of course, the Elixir advisors are going to be getting a discount. The discount applies to the advice document fee, not the technology. We couldn't discount the technology because it's too cheap already, Sue.
Okay. Are you happy to go? How much is the technology? Or does that depend on how many people I've got?
Yeah, it depends on the tech that you take. And so we've basically broken up into standalone software and bundles. And whether you're an advisor or a support staff member, I implore the advisors to jump online and have a look at the technology. It's all on our website. We don't shy away from the tech fees, but you know, if you're an advisor using the paraplanning, you're talking about $320 a month for the tech fee, and then we've got like a practice license. So once you get to a certain number of advisors, it caps out.
Right. Okay, great. So clearly, as with any other provider member offer, I think advisors will be listening to this and probably have a whole bunch of questions that relates to their own personal circumstances. So the next step for advisors from here, if they're loving what you've said so far and they want to see what Padua could do for them personally, best way to reach out, links in the show notes, in the video.
Give us a call, jump online. All of our details are online. Brett Canning, Joey McCann, myself, Cabalan, Murugananthan, we're all available to take calls from advisors. But if you jump online and go to the Padua website, all our details are on there. And yeah, give us a call, and we'd be happy to give you a demo and give you a trial of the software.
That's great. And if you are an Evolve Alliance provider member, an Elixir client, you just log into your Evolve Alliance and you'll have a unique code there to be able to access the preferential pricing through Padua.
Absolutely.
So thanks so much for your time, Matt. Fantastic service and product that you've put together. Congratulations. I know that it's been a huge amount of work for a long period of time, but I think you're really nailing it, and it's great to have you on board.
Thanks, Sue. And it's a pleasure to be part of the Elixir community, and we really appreciate what you guys do as well.